Now, I will try to do this in less than 5 minutes, but it will be no more than at least 10 minutes. But I want to discuss this particular issue that somebody made mention to me in my DMs. But before we do that, let's deal with the stereotypes right now.
Well, we don't want them here.
They're your brothers.
They're not our
and
brothers.
sisters.
They're not our brothers.
They are.
If you were born in America and have lived there for 300 years, you're no longer African. Those are Americans. We don't need them.
We don't need
They
them
were
to develop.
taken away, unfortunately, but they are Americans. We will develop by ourselves. Yeah, we have the capacity, we have the will, we have the resolve. We don't need them. No.
I totally agree with you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
So, with that, I'm just going to close out on that the Lord put a difference between the Israelites and the Africans, although it's still Israelites in Africa. I'm not knocking that. And with that, I just want to say shalom.
I learned the Quran.
Huh?
I learned the Quran.
You're African, right?
Yeah.
You're a Muslim?
Yeah.
What part of Africa you from?
West Africa.
West Africa, what land?
Senegal.
Senegalese, right?
Senegalese.
More likely than not, you're a Hamite. You're not on that sign. So you're going to captivity under the children of Israel. Right?
Under Hakata,
yeah.
Slave, right?
Right, you call it Black American Hakata. You know, you said slave, right?
I'm not a slave.
Cotton picking Black American, right?
Don't you know the African, like, the people that came from Africa, they're not slaves, for me. African American are slaves.
Oh,
there you go.
I'm
wow.
No, you know,
I like that.
Ham goes ham.
And I'm interested. You know what? That shows you that we're not the same people.
we're not.
Because I'm a.
There you go.
We're not.
Yo, I like that.
Don't you know the African, like the people that came from Africa, they're not slaves for me. African American are slaves.
Oh,
There you go. I'm saying.
wow.
No, you know,
like that.
ham goes ham.
And I'm interested. You know what? That shows you that we're not the same people.
We're not.
Because I'm a.
There you go.
Hold up! Time out! Time out! Y'all take a chill. You need to cool that shit out. And that's the double truth. Rule.
So I asked her, plain and simple, what does this video prove? And she responded back saying, wow, you are really slow. Enjoy the video. And I said, I saw the video. Being called slow isn't needed. I'm asking a simple question. She responded, I gave you a simple answer, dummy. You slow and love to chase clout. Enjoy the video, dummy. Now, I do not know why she assumed that I like to chase clout, because I inform my people on the basis of being an African. I also do not know why the name calling was needed, because I never called her a simple name. I never called her out of her name, for that matter. Nor did I, call her, stupid, or, insulted her intelligence, as people like to say. But you see how emotional she got. And of course, a lot of women get emotional when trying to prove a point. But the point that she was trying to prove with that video is that African people do not proclaim, or they do not claim us on the continent. Now, I want you to see the contradiction here, because she made that video, she sent that video to me as a form of evidence to say that we're not African, because she believes that we're the quote-unquote aborigines, or the indigenous people of this land. But I want you to notice something that the man said. He said that the people that were shipped off to America for quote-unquote 300 years, right? First of all, his number is off. But he said the people that were sent off for 300 years were African, but they've been living for 300 years in America, so now they are American. Now, how can a quote-unquote indigenous or an aboriginal man or woman try to use this video as a way of saying that we were never African, we never came from the continent, but the man that they're trying to use this evidence for said that they were African, they were on this land, but then they were shipped off, right? Can't use this as a form of evidence if you are going to use the logic or the basis or the argument that you were never African to begin with. And then the evidence that you try to use says that you were African, but you were shipped off and you were Americanized and brainwashed, and now you're American. Second, let's deal with the issue at hand of what the man said. First of all, Slavery has been going on since the 1400s. Um, so that's way more than 300 years. Let's deal with that fact. Secondly, he is also wrong by saying that they are quote unquote American just because they have been living in a particular land for over 300 years, not by their will. Not by their will. Let's also keep in mind that us as African people, most of us are not even mixed with any form of whiteness or any other nation or race of people that is propagated. So I find it to be a very ignorant argument to try and say that because we were taken from our lands, we were stripped of our language and our heritage and our culture, that we're no longer those particular people. We have to understand that a lot of us are still suffering from an identity crisis, and we don't know where we came from or who we are as African people, which is why we want to identify with just anything and everything, because we know that having an identity gives us a purpose, and Europeans know that as well. And if they propagate to us that we're quote unquote aborigines, or that we're something that we are not, then they will continue to conquer us as we stay divided amongst each other as African people. We have to also understand that a lot of us are coming to a sense of realization of who we are as African people, and are making the next step of finding out about what really happened to us, and also finding out about our African heritage and reconnecting back with the continent. But while that is happening, we also have to be aware that Europeans do not want this to happen because they fear us getting back in power and reclaiming our lands and our resources, so on and so forth. Something I also want to make known while looking this book that I have by Dr. Jawanza Kanjufu is a quote that was made by Casil Rose. He made an article called The Confession of Faith, which provides a historical blueprint of the scramble for Africa that happened between 1881 and 1914. And you can pause it so you can read it for yourself. But it basically tells you that they are the master race, and they will do anything that they can to dominate, to impact, and to steal and rape not only the African people, but the African lands as well. But getting back to the actual issue, us as African people who are within the Americas or anywhere other than the continent Africa, let's also be very aware of what has really happened to us as African people within the Americas. We were stripped away from our language, from our heritage, and from our culture, which left us to a bastardized version of our culture, and also having us to accept and conform to Eurocentric belief systems like Christianity. But let's also not be unaware of the fact that this also has happened within Africa. The only difference is that they were more free and open to express their cultural obligations within their communities, or within their villages and their nations and their lands. You cannot make an argument based off of 2 or 3 continental African people who are misinformed and misguided, also obtaining a religion that was given to them by their oppressor. You cannot say or even use this as evidence to say that they do not proclaim us as African people, and yet they are colonized and misinformed themselves. For the man who said that we as quote unquote Africans within America are Americanized, they are also colonialized in the same aspect and formality as well. But someone might say, well, we don't look alike. We don't look the same, Tyrone. We don't even look like them damn stank Africans. And whenever they say that, this is who they are talking about. They'll find the darkest complexion, most Afrocentric, Negroid featured black man that they can find on the continent and say, look, I don't look like him, so that we can't be African. There's no way we could be African. Look how dark they are. Look at their nose. Look at their features. There ain't no way we could look like them. Not realizing that there are over 30 to 40 different variations of what an African looks like. So how can you pick one variation or one phenotype of an African and say, eyes, copperhead, massa? There just ain't no way I could be them stank-ass African living in the jungle. And you see, it's always, hilarious to me. It's very hysterical that these Aborigines, they use the same Eurocentric narratives as their oppressor. They use the same Eurocentric narrative. That's beyond me. In conclusion, us as African people, we are in an identity crisis. And agendas like that are pushed in the Israelite movements and the Aboriginal movements, they are pushed to disassociate ourselves from our true identity. You can't use people on the continent who are misinformed and misdirected and brainwashed as a way of saying, see, they don't claim us, they don't proclaim us, they think we're Akatas, we think this and that and the third. And at the same way, we also consider ourselves niggas, and we don't want to identify with them because we've been given a Eurocentric narrative of them as they have been given of us. Let's also make known that a lot of continental African people are influenced by us in the way that we dress, our style, our fashion, our dance moves, whether you want to believe it or not. So we're not that far apart when it concerns trends. And please look at my video on Memorandum 46, and it talks about the agenda, the executive order that was created by the US government to disassociate the quote-unquote black conscious movements, black nationalist movements from associating with continental Africans. Please look into that. Research into that as well. Until next time, I am Tyrone. Thank you for listening to what I had to say. Like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, comment below about how you felt about what I had to say. If you like what I had to say, if you didn't like what I had to say, let all that be known in the comment section below. Support my clothing line business. I have some shirts that will be coming soon, but until then, the link to my business and to my website will be in the description box below. Support my clothing line business, subscribe to my YouTube channel, share this video with other people. Until next time, you guys, I'm Tyrone, and I am out.
Castle was once one of the main departure points for slaves that were being sent to America. Tens of thousands of Africans left the continent from this very hall.
Right, so if you survived your stay here, this was going to be your last point of call. Door of no return.
It's become somewhat of a pilgrimage site as more and more Americans journey here to learn about their history.
You know why I am African? Or how you became African. She knows now that this is real.
Ghana has labelled 2019 the year of return. The government aims to attract more of the African diaspora, just like Candice and Stephen Williams, who left Baltimore 2 years ago. A radical change, they've even adopted new names.
Welcome back home.
Thank you.
What's your local name?
My local name is Kojo.
I'm confused.
The market organiser is thrilled to see that Americans are moving here.
They've been out of the continent for a very long time. They've acquired a lot of knowledge. Africans still need a lot of knowledge to develop it. Yeah, we've seen a lot, so we are happy. And I, for one, am happy.
But despite his warm welcome, integrating into Ghanaian society hasn't been as straightforward as they'd expected.
You know, because of our complexion or our accent, some people refer to us as white. You know, they don't know what a black American is.
And despite being swamped in red tape and the trouble of finding a job, the former instructor has no regrets.
You can see my hair was a lot shorter then.
Their children and grandchildren have all stayed behind.
There's no better place to be for me than on the land of my origin.
Why?
Because I am an African woman.
They've even done a DNA test to find out more about their African ancestry.
I believe this one is yours.
The couple are planning on starting an organisation to help other African Americans who want to make the move to Ghana. Nathania took the leap over 20 years ago when he moved here from New York.
This place, we started it in around 1995 or thereabout, and there was nothing but coconut trees and high grass here.
He opened this hotel near the Cape Coast Castle. He's seen generations of African Americans settle here, and says misconceptions about the continent are almost a thing of the past.
African Americans are now opening up to the reality that Africa is not a land filled with jungles and people living in tree houses, and people are seeing that there's real development and growth and opportunity going on in Africa.
Some are looking to reconnect with their past, while others seek new opportunities. Several thousands of African Americans have already made the move, and the trend is showing no sign of slowing down.
As the year 2019 marks 400 years since the commencement of the transatlantic slave trade, Ghanaian artist Kwame Akoto-Bamfo has been sculpting hundreds of faces to represent the men and women who fell victim to slavery. Akoto-Bamfo has placed the sculptures in Adafoa, which was a major slave market in the 19th century when the region was under British rule.
What I hope to do is to capture an experience and let this art trigger a dialogue about who we are as an African people, who we were before, and then where we are going, especially with something like the transatlantic slave trade and the Saharan slave trade and racism having happened as a result, of this atrocity.
Akoto-Bamfo said he used to choose his models in the past to portray specific expressions and traits. But now he prefers to use random models so as to sculpt faces from all over Africa because people from all over the continent were enslaved.
Previously, I will pick a particular model based on the looks and what I have in my head and then what I want to portray. But then over the years, to cut down on the idealism that in the work, in the narrative, and then in the people being portrayed.
The artist believes the best way to remember the ancestors is to respect their descendants.